In my opinion, in my experience, the best sales leaders have the right people. They understand they have the right people in place, either by being really great at hiring or by inheriting good people. If you're not investing time in coaching your reps and figuring out how to get them better, you don't care. You don't actually care. Just because you're a good rep does not mean you're going to be a good manager. To be frank, unless you're taught how, you're normally going to fail in that role. If I ask this question to a room full of probably SDR leaders, what's the purpose of a cold call? A lot of them are going to say to book a meeting. If you go into a call with that mindset, you're not going to be an active listener, right? You're not going to be seeking first to understand the person you're calling. You should go into a cold call with the mindset.
Hey Brian, how's it going, brother?
Hey, Michael, doing good, man. Doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Happy to see you again. Excited for our podcast.
Yeah, pumped to be here. As a former podcast host myself, it's weird being on the other side of the seat. I'm not going to lie, but definitely looking forward to the combo.
Yeah, man. And more interesting, I think, fact is that if you remember, I reached out to you 3 years ago, asked for feedback before we build actually selling this one, and now you're a client. So I'm super excited, to have this conversation and get your insight. And today we're going to focus on your journey first. I'm excited to, learn about the things that maybe you don't have on LinkedIn. It's always interesting to dig into those. And then hear about some of the challenges again, leaders like yourself might face when getting to a new organization and inherit a team. So we're going to get into that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, man. So I've been in sales leadership my whole career, really, for about 15 years, half of it in B2C retail, and then the last like 7, 8-ish in tech, right? So I started in an outsourced SDR agency, which was, basically the best place you could go to cut your teeth. We got to work with massive brands and small startups and really see outbound go to market at every scale and every size. From there, I did a little bit of selling and HR payroll software, and then spent 4 years at a sales coaching software company called Ambition, where again got to work with sales leaders, right? Those are our customers. So got to see what some of the biggest brands in the world were doing when it comes to sales management, modern sales performance, coaching, etc. And then recently, I'm very fortunate to have started a new role leading the U.S. team here at 8x8 in our sales development function. So 90 days in, hitting the ground running, and it's been a really fun journey so far. But that's a little bit about me work wise. Outside of work, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I coach travel basketball and try to stay busy. But yeah, pumped to dig in with you today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, appreciate you sharing. Tell me what's going on in your life right now. It's been 90 days with 8x8. So tell us a little bit about like some of the challenges that you face again joining the company. Do you see any similarities compared to, other companies that you joined in and inherited the team, or what some of the things that are completely different?
Yeah, it's funny when you're starting something new, right? In my opinion, building it from the ground up is a lot easier than inheriting an existing team, believe it or not. When you're looking to make positive change, right? I'm this new face to, 25 people, right? I'm learning all these new systems, all these new kind of ways we go to market, processes, operations, like there's so much, right? So for any like leader starting at a new place, um, you have to get a lay of the land, right? I'm a big imitate before you innovate guy, right? So a lot of the big challenges early on at 8x8 for me, and really any leader anywhere to me, are like understanding every wire. Where is it running? Why is it connected? Should it be connected? Understanding the people before anything. Like what drives my people? What motivates them? Why are they here? Right? Why do they want to show up to work every day? And then you have like the vision, right? So most leaders are brought into orgs to take a team from point A to point B and then to point C and D, right? So you really can't execute the vision until you understand the first two things, right? The people, the process, and the technology. So yeah, it's kind of like you're playing a game of operations starting off. You can only grab certain things out, and you gotta really understand the lay of the land. So that's what I've been doing the first 90 days, right? Digging into all of those things, imitating, right? Doing the things that work and building out a plan to innovate, right? So really, what are we going to change, right? What are we going to, innovate on? What are we going to bring to the table that is a new idea, right? That may make people uncomfortable, right? I think
Hmm.
being uncomfortable is really good because that means we're changing, and we're doing that, right? And we're going to dig into this through AI, through technology, right? Through some really fun, motivating ways. But yeah, challenges early on are those things. Just you've heard the phrase "drinking from a fire hose," but it's good, right? It's really good.
Okay. So tell me something. Like, how do you build this balance between getting to know the process, the tools we are using, the mission, the vision, while building your team? Because you already inherited a team, and it's not a small team, and you're still hiring, and you need to evaluate and see what the gaps might be. How do you really build that balance? Like, where should we focus more?
Yeah, I think that it's easy. A lot of sales leaders, in my opinion, are too they have too much ego in the game, right? They think they built some amazing process or created this cool methodology or figured out the secret cold call script, right? In my opinion, in my experience, the best sales leaders have the right people, right? Like they understand they have the right people in place, either by being really great at hiring or by inheriting good people. And I've fortunately inherited a really good team, right? So like the balance to start is 100%. Do I have the people? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
because if you don't have the people to do the job, you can't do the job, right? AI is super important, right? AI in tech is valuable and we need it. But there are still people clicking buttons at the end of the day and people having conversations and people talking to your customers, right? AI isn't talking to your customers yet. So you have to understand the people first. And being transparent, my first day at 8 I met every single SDR in that first week. I wanted to make sure every single human was good, was just a good person in general. So
Hmm.
I think the first step is people, right? Then process, then technology. But to answer that question, when you're starting somewhere new or inheriting a team or creating a team, right? You got to make
Hmm.
sure you got the right people on board that are aligned not only with the ability to do the job, but your mission, right? Your vision, right? We have a vision like we're doing well, but we're not where we want to be, right? We want to
Hmm.
do more, right? We
Hmm.
want to exceed limits. We want to shatter boundaries, and I think I want people that are driven to kind of do something more than just hit the number. You know what I mean? We're in sales, like duh, right? Hitting the
Hmm.
numbers, that's just part of the game, right? I want people that want a little bit more than that. So that would be my long-winded answer to that question there.
I love it. But let's talk about the things that you said beyond numbers, right? So this first 1 week, you spent a lot of time going through these one-on-one calls, getting to know your team. What sort of conversations you are having? Is it around their challenges? Is it around, I don't know, how they do their job, or no, purely about just getting to know them as a person?
Well, the first conversations are getting to know them as a person, right? And that's pretty straightforward, right? If I don't know what motivates them, what they care about, why they're here, I don't know how to coach them. I
Yeah.
don't know how to develop them. I don't know what I need to give them, right? As leaders, it's our job to remove roadblocks, right?
Hmm.
So the next conversation, right? So here's something a little more tactical is like, hey, like what is preventing you, right, from hitting quota? What is preventing you for being as efficient as you possibly can be, right? What roadblocks are in your way? That question alone, you're going to get a different answer from every rep. And what that allows you to do is understand where they're hung up. Some people are going to give you like, hey, this technology isn't working, right? My Zoom Info extension isn't working. My outreach plugin isn't working, right? Some people, right, are going to give you skill gaps. Like, hey, I'm really struggling reaching out to this industry or this persona. And then others are going to give you stuff out of left field, and you're going to, holy crap, what is he? I don't even know what that means, right? So like the roadblocks question is crucially important, because what that allows you to do is prioritize the stuff you want to fix, right? The stuff you want to not touch, right? Because it's not broken, and the stuff that you want to add in order to do that. So that's the next level of understanding, is like, what are the problems you have today, person, right? Person A, person B, and then you can kind of get a much better visual of what you need to do next.
Mhm. So first you get to know them, then you understand the problem, but it's a process, tech, personal development, skill development, if you will. And then what would you do next? So what's the next step after that?
Yeah, the next step after that is like coming up with a plan. All right. So as a second line leader, I need to make sure my managers are on the same page as me. Right. So enabling your frontline leaders to coach individual reps to those problems that they have, and then the bigger problems that are kind of across the team. Right. So what happens after you start uncovering those roadblocks is, oh shoot, 50% of my team is struggling with this same
Uh-huh.
thing. Whatever that thing is, that's probably a much larger project, right? That's probably something that I need to involve other people with in order to fix, right? So you have your bigger picture projects, right? And then you have your actual individual rep coaching. And I think in the vein of what we're talking about today, like that one-on-one rep coaching has got to be rep led, right? That's why we lead with the roadblock and what they're struggling with now, right? Is your manager enabled to coach them, right?
Uh-huh.
So like, do we have what technology are we using to coach? How are we documenting it? Is it working? Right? Like, is it actually having an impact? So having coaching systems in place, and coaching systems is a thing, right? Often we talk about sales processes and sales systems, but we need to be maniacal with the way we think about coaching reps. Think about it, right? Like, the amount of time you show something is really the meter of how much you care, right? If you're not investing time in coaching your reps and figuring out how to get them better, yeah, you don't care. You don't actually care, right? So a lot
Uh-huh.
of people don't know how to do that, right? But a lot of people don't understand, like, you can have a system in place, and the word coaching is so broad. So let's dive into that. But that would be the next step, is like, what is the plan now to fix some of those problems, and how do we think about it in a systematic way?
Hmm. Look, I know you're big in coaching and you spend a lot of time with your people, but in director level, you have managers, to your point. Sometimes you have to get even new managers and then assign them to different teams. How do you ensure that your managers know how to coach? And if you figure out that they can't because you inherited them as part of the team that you're leading, then how do you navigate? Do you literally go for offboarding and try to plan that, or you think during this 90 days it's time to really upskill even managers to be able to do a better job at coaching and helping the team?
Yeah, it's pouring into those managers to upskill them first, right? Like that's where it needs to start. Think about it. The frontline sales manager or SDR leader is the most stretched resource in a sales org, right? Think about it. They have the most direct reports, one to one, right? So they're managing anywhere between 6 and 10. I've talked to some leaders at other companies that have 15 reps, which is crazy.
Yeah.
They're managing up to me, their director. They're cross functionally working with enablement. They're working with ops. They're working with HR. They're working with all of these teams, right? They are just friggin' drawn in so many directions. So what I found, and is, a lot of sales leaders, either two things happened. One, they got promoted because they were a super rep, right? They were the best SDR, best salesperson. They just got promoted and thrown into leadership. Just because you're a good rep does not mean you're going to be a good manager. To be frank, unless you're taught how, you're normally going to fail
Yeah.
in that role, right?
Yeah.
Um, or they've been lifelong leaders, right? They've been a manager and have jumped company to company to company because they're good at it and they love leading people. So I want to make sure I have the right people in place. Fortunately, I do here at 8x8. Then it's about enabling them to be a force multiplier, right? So
Mhm.
that manager's span of influence is greater than anyone, right? because they work with those 8 reps every day. And if that manager can coach the right things the right way and get 8 reps to go from C players to B players and B players to A players, guess what happens, Mr. or Miss Sales Leader? You hit your number, right?
Mhm.
Again, it's about the people. So I dig in with the managers. I make sure they're enabled. And, probably talk tactically, like we're bringing on 2 tools, yours included, right, to help them do that, because often managers want to do a good job, but again, they are so stretched they can't, right? So it's our job to enable them, and that's kind of where I try to focus.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai.
Let me ask you this. So, based on your experience, you again inherited a lot of teams. So, sometimes we have great people, sometimes we have people who might not actually be the fit for the job. And that's the reality of, again, getting to any new organization as a director or even VP level. So, when you go through assessments, I don't know if you had this experience in the past, when you notice someone is not a fit, and it happens. It could be a rep, it could be a manager. What's the right course of action? Like, how do you navigate this during this, 90 days? What would you do when your gut feeling from day one, when you go through this one-on-ones, this person is not really built for this job?
Well, the first thing I want to call out with what you said there is gut feeling, right? Your gut feeling is your head and your heart talking, right? Some people think gut feeling is this whim on a whim type thing. I disagree, right? In your gut, right? That person's got it, right? Or that person doesn't have it,
Mhm.
right? In your gut, I think they're going to be a problem and not want to
Yeah.
adopt this new way, or holy crap, I cannot wait. That person's going to crush it, right?
Mhm.
Gut feeling is your head and your heart. So in a 90-day period, right, in that first 90 days, when you're trying to kind of influence change, all those people that aren't part of the new vision, if they're detractors, being blunt, they need to go, right? If they're going to detract from the culture you're trying to build, they don't belong there, right? If they're neutral, right? So what that means is like they're on the fence, right? Maybe they're not performing, or maybe they're not all in, but they're also just kind of probably haven't had enough guidance in the past, haven't had
Mhm.
enough leadership in the past. Those people are the ones you want to focus on, right? Those are the people that you want to spend time with. And if they're positive, like all in people, those are the ones you run with. So I'll tell you a story about a company way back. One of my first leadership roles, I was managing retail locations, B2C, in the wireless world. So, AT&T phone stores. And I had a top rep at a store, like the number one rep in the state. And we were going through a lot of change, right? The business was going through change. We were offering new products, new services. And this number one on the leaderboard rep was a detractor, right? He was
Mhm.
a guy that spread negativity. I'm not doing it, right? Forget the new way. That's BS. I hit my number month in, month out. I don't need to do that. I was a new leader at the time, and I was like, geez, the environment this guy's creating in the store is rubbing
Yeah.
off really bad, right, on his teammates. And it's,
Yeah.
almost like a virus, right? How, like, if the 5 other people at this store aren't going to do the new things we need them to do, push the products we need them to push, because this guy's influencing them not to, he's taking away from the greater number. I let him go, right? I fired him.
Mhm.
And that store the next month moved from like 8th on the leaderboard to number one in the district. And we let go of the number one rep, right? So
Mhm.
logically, on paper that doesn't make sense, but it's more than the number, right? So when you're coming in, if you have detractors from what you're trying to build, it hey, it's a harsh reality, but it's a reality because those people have a multiplying effect, right, across the team. So, yeah, to answer your question, you got to make sure you have that team in place, and if people aren't on board, um, that's just the reality of it all.
I really love this story because it says a lot about your leadership style, and also, it's a smart move because just imagine you inherited a team. They're historically underperforming. It's at number 8 on the leaderboard. And it's very scary. It's a big risk. Should I really fire the top performing, rep that is actually performing really well across the board, but having this understanding that he is going to, slow down the entire team. And how do you make that decision? That's a skill set as a leader, I would say, to really, tactically make that decision and call, hey, I take this risk by heart, let him go, and I build my own team. And it kind of like opens a new can of worm. I wanted to ask you, have you ever in your career had a team of underperformers that you got in his first 90 days, you did everything you could do, and the majority are underperforming reps? How do you manage that? Because you cannot fire everyone, obviously. So how would you deal with that?
Yeah, that's like it's a difficult dilemma, right? So
Yeah.
I'll put you in the shoes of what that direct manager's thinking, right? They're thinking, and I think this scenario happens often, not just inheriting a team, Michael, but a team in general that's
Mhm.
struggling.
Yeah.
Is they have, let's say you have 10 people on your team, right? And the majority of the team is struggling. You may have 2 to 3 reps that are just cancerous, right? For lack of a
Yeah.
better term, but they're your number one reps. They're not performing, right? But they're your number one rep, right? So
Mhm.
logically, you think, hey, like this person, right? Rep B, right? For lack of a better term, she is consistently hitting 70%.
Mhm.
70% isn't good, right? We want 80, 90, 100, right? We want to be
Yeah.
100. Rep B's hitting 70%. She's never going to get above it. She's always there. She always does the bare minimum, but that's the most production I have right now. If I let her go, I got to train, I have to onboard. It's going to be another 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to have this quota gap, right? So I'd rather just take the 70% and just not hold them accountable, right? And not manage them and not, right, make change, right? People are adverse to change because it's scary, right?
Mhm.
But if you do that, guess what? Nothing is ever going to change. It's always going to be that way. So, like, you have to be comfortable, and your business needs to understand that the short-term impact is worth the long-term, kind of result. So when I hear that stories like that, Michael, to me, it's a greater issue, right?
Yep.
It's not. It's to be honest with you, it's probably more, a company wide problem, or that person above that person is probably not the best leader, right? Because you should be having communication, right? Your manager to director, director to VP, like that shouldn't be a shock, right? So
Mhm.
if decision maker, right, the top of the food chain, the head honcho, if they're against making those changes, there's probably some type of like,
Cultural gap.
yeah, greater problem going
Yeah.
on, right? But it's difficult, and honestly how a lot of sales managers think is like this is good enough, right?
Mhm.
Um, and there's nothing wrong with having a 70% quarter every now and then, but if someone's consistently underperforming, you're not doing them a service, and you're not doing the business a service, right? You're doing a disservice. So, um, the final component of that is you got to look in the mirror yourself. What
Mhm.
have you done to help them, right? Have you coached them? Have you developed them? Have you identified why, right? If the whole team is struggling, guess what? There's 3 things it could be. Your quotas are too high, right? Which normally that's not the case, but sometimes it is. You are not a good leader, right? Because you have not coached, developed, or improved anybody, right? You're just probably a spreadsheet manager, make more dials, book more meetings, right? You're not actually coaching, right? Or 3, you did a really bad job of hiring, right? Those are the only things that could cause a problem like that. So net, it's probably a greater problem,
Mhm.
but how you actually solve it is fixing those 3 things. And to me, there's 2 schools of thought. One is rip the band-aid, right? And everyone knows what that means. And the other is, uh, kind of slowly getting the right people into the business. Every business is different. Everyone's appetite for change is different. That's a whole other long road we go down, but start with looking in the mirror and understanding the problem of why that's happening. And can you correct that first? Then if not, then you have to go down the road of managing people out and all that.
Makes sense. And you mentioned something interesting while you were talking about leadership, which is absolutely correct. Again, we either have wrong people or we don't have the leadership skill necessarily to really run the team. But just imagine you come to the company, you already maybe got a heads up. So if you have that relationship with the decision maker, whether it's VP of sales or whoever you are directly reporting to, if you have this trust, this level of trust that, hey, we need to make massive changes, I think things hopefully and potentially can get better. Now, we understood that you got to the company, you got to know your team, and you understood the problems, you have a plan. So let's just put that aside for a second. Let's talk about other stakeholders involved that help you basically run your work easier moving forward. Where do you start? Who do you get on the call first? I know you have HRs and onboarding and all that stuff. Like a little bit beyond that, like how do you tactically get closer to other decision makers in different departments so you can have support?
Yeah, that to me, that's one of the most important things is cross-functional collaboration. You hear people talk about it on LinkedIn. It's a fun word to say. When you say cross-functional collaboration, makes you sound smart. But what does that actually mean? Like, what does that look like in practice? It's not just a standing meeting with the VP of sales and a standing meeting with marketing and a standing meeting with ops. Like, no, right? It's, I look at those relationships as like you need to have mutual action plans, right? The same way, like, you should have a mutual action plan with your buyers, right? If you're selling, like, they need to be bought into what you're doing, right? If they're actually going to help you influence change. So starting off, right, you have to get to know them, right? You have to get to understand, like, how do our teams function today and how should they be functioning, right? In terms of together. So we'll take SDR AE, right? Our SDRs are rolling in one-to-one, right, with their account executives. They're booking meetings directly for their AEs. Like, that's a really important relationship. That relationship needs to be super strong, right? I'm a big believer. Sales is marketing's customer, right? So like SDR, we roll into marketing here. Like, our product is the meetings that we're putting across or the opportunities we're creating, right? I got to make sure my customer, my AEs and my sales leaders are happy with the product, right? So that cross-functional relationship requires a lot of, like, honestly, it's like running a sales process, like understanding pains and problems, providing value, collaborating together, and making sure that the end result is going to have a business impact, right? You then have your other cross-functional partners that are enabling you to do your job, right? So think about ops, think about enablement, think about HR, right? You need to build relationships with the leaders of all of those units because they're the ones that are going to help you help your customer, right? Using SDR in this scenario. So like, how do they support you? How can they make your life better, right? We over here, my ops team, we're gonna wine and dine them, right? Because I need I don't know how to do all that stuff. I'm just a dumb sales leader, right? So it's like it's funny, but you have to build those relationships, but you have to have mutual action plans and like understand the things, right, that you're trying to do. Right? A standing meeting once a month or once a week, just going over numbers is BS, right? Like, because those are results, right? We need to be going over the inputs, not the outputs cross functionally. We need to be going over the outputs too, don't get me wrong, but to affect change, those meetings need to be about inputs, not outputs.
All right. I really like this. And we can take this conversation right now in so many different directions. If you could choose one case to discuss, pick the most important one to your org that helps actually with your success, even early on. Of course, you have to build this relationship, cross-functionally with everyone. But if you could pick one team to discuss today, pick one and let's just get a little tactical.
Let's talk about the SDR and sales relationship if you want to ask me some questions there.
Awesome. So tell me about some of the common shocking, factors or talk tracks when you go through these conversations with leaders? I don't know if you do one-on-ones with some of the AEs as well to understand, their perspective. And if you do, just share some of those, things that you hear, especially when you just, inherit the team as a SDR leader.
Yeah, and this isn't us. This is everyone, right? This is every organization. There's not enough pipeline, right? There's not enough pipeline, right? Even if we're hitting quota, not enough pipeline, right? That's the most common thing that sales is going to say to marketing and SDR, right? There's not enough. And a question that you need to ask is, well, what is the quality of it, right? So what's the quality of the pipeline that's coming through? Something like we do over here at 8x8 that's a little different than most is like our SDRs overqualified, right? We intentionally, we're not throwing meetings over the fence, right? Like we are qualifying these leads, and that requires self-accountability. It's really easy cross-functioning to blame another department because when the finger's being pointed at you, it's pretty natural to point it at someone else. Not here, right? Good leadership, we're accountable, right? Like you're right? We can do more, right? We should be doing this. We should be doing that. And it's important to have thick skin with stuff like that, right? If you can't take criticism, it's really hard to actually collaborate with other leaders, right? You have to put your ego aside, right? And you have to own it, right? If that's the case, right? Often, right, that's kind of the case, right? Sometimes your team could be struggling in these areas, but then there's also something on the other side of the fence. So making sure you ask the right questions back. And often what happens is like you uncover, hey, the AEs haven't been marking these opportunities the right way. Holy crap, we're actually have more pipeline than we thought, right? Or these are some deals your team missed, and vice versa. Hey, my SDRs were putting through meetings. This meeting probably shouldn't have flipped, right? This meeting probably shouldn't have been booked for an AE. That's on us. Our rep was, 3 weeks in. This is their first phone call. They had a great qualification. They booked it, right? But it wasn't a good fit. So, like the running line, Michael, to answer your question, is open lines of communication. It shouldn't be, again, one meeting a month.
Of course,
You should be messaging with these people. It doesn't need to be daily, but it should be a running conversation. It should be a thread, a timeline of talking, right? It's not when you wait for point in time stuff, you miss out on everything that happens in between. So with sales and sales development, we like, going back to some tactile is like what ideally needs to come through to define a qualified meeting. If that's not defined, you can't do anything until you define what an SQL is and both sides of the business agree to it, right? Plain and simple. I think 8x8's a great point of this. Ambition, my last company, did a really good job of this, of like, we have a clearly defined SQL. It's black and white. It's not up to the AE or the SDR. It's not a subjective guideline. It's like, if these three things are true, it qualifies, right? So that to me is one of the things, specific to SDR and sales, that works, right? That eliminates a lot of friction.
So can we dig in a little bit more about what makes an opportunity actually qualify? Like, how do you really define? Because you said it's black and white. It's something that SDRs and A's cannot change as long as they hit certain points. What are those points to say this is a qualified lead?
My answer has nothing to do with 8x8 here. This is more so my ideology, like Brian as a sales guy, what I think, and we do a lot of this, right? It's like, one, I think there's a big problem with a qualified meeting and a forecastable meeting. Me, I'm a believer there's a difference, right? Like an SDR can book a really good meeting, right? That they should get paid on, but we can't forecast that meeting yet, right? So like understanding those early stage deals, what an SQL is, it means it's a qualified opportunity, right? There is something there that the account executive can sell, right? Simply put, right? So how do you know they can sell it, right? In my mind, like, I'm not a BANT guy, and we don't do that here either, but like, do you have the right person, right? Is the meeting with somebody that's qualified? You don't need the decision maker. You don't need the economic buyer. All right. But do you have a champion, or do you have somebody with authority that is like, this is a qualified person to book,
Mm-hmm.
right? So every company's different, right? If you're selling enterprise software, it's probably a director and up title, right, with a specific persona. But you could be selling like product-led growth software where, hey, I just need a manager, I need a user, right? Like, so that
Mm-hmm.
changes based on the business, but is the person that you're booking the meeting with, are they qualified, right? Often as a champion, a buyer, or an influencer. The second thing, and this is, it's not a timeline, but is there an initiative, right? So an initiative or a reason, right? You can flip that over and say, is there a pain or problem? There's always going to be pains and problems, right? So like, is there an initiative, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
this is just educational, it's still worth meeting. It's still worth getting our foot in the door. It's
Mm-hmm.
still worth talking because you can take an educational call and real quick they can have an initiative that they maybe hid from you. So I'm not saying don't book those meetings, but the qualified line, there is something happening, right? There's a reason to meet, as I call it. So qualified person, reason to meet, right? And then the last component is this is simple. It's like momentum. Is there a next step? There's no next step after that
Mm-hmm.
first call. You can't flip. You cannot flip it, right? There needs to be
Mm-hmm.
a next step on the books that happens, right? And that often aligns to your company's sales process, right? It could be a demo, it could be a technical discovery, it could be whatever it is, right? A next step needs to be booked. And I think those are the three things in my mind, Michael, that we need to. One, is it the right person? Two, is there a reason to meet? And three, is there a next step? If you have those three things, we got a shot, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have a shot to sell this thing. That means it's qualified. Does that mean you should forecast that opportunity in your next
Mm-hmm.
pipeline meeting? No, right? But if those three things are true, we need to SQL that because the business needs visibility, right, on those deals. A big miss a lot of companies make, I was consulting for a company a few years ago, is they were really stringent with their qualification. And when we dipped into their early stage close lost, so a lot of the opportunities that were closing lost and not getting qualified, we were reading the notes on some of these and actually digging into the calls and getting AI, fed back to us through their call recording technology. And like, there were like 50% of their close loss deals were like people with checkbooks out, right? But because their criteria was so stringent,
Mm-hmm.
they were falling by the wayside and there was no visibility, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't circle back, we couldn't follow up, right? Just because they didn't buy today doesn't mean in 8 months they weren't going to buy, right? So when we don't have visibility on it, right, we miss out on all of this kind of really important stuff that could help us hit the numbers. So that's my personal idea on like how you should look at qualifying a meeting.
I really love it. And like the fact that you're really focused on bar personas and to your point, instead of going with some, you know, outdated band sort of activities, and you'll be surprised some people still, do the same thing. Hey, we got budget here. Nobody talks about budget with you, especially like that first conversation. Nobody wants to get into, all those things. It's like you go, meet someone right away and say, hey, by the way, how much are you making? It's none of your business. It's the same thing. Sometimes we, push for wrong information and even burn opportunities on top of funnel. I wanted to ask something about actually like the way your reps are running these conversations. Right now, everybody's talking about AI, of course, AI SDRs. Let's automate more. And I know you're still very phone heavy, if you will. So you want that real conversation with people. How do you make sure that first and foremost, your reps really have this mindset that things could actually positively happen for them because your approach is different? You're not going through asking the wrong questions to the wrong people.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift, right? So uh, if I ask this question to a room full of probably SDR leaders, what's the purpose of a cold call, right? A lot of them are going to say to book a meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I bet you if you ask that question to 100 salespeople, just say sales in general, what's the purpose of a cold call, right? To book a meeting. That's wrong, right? If you go into a call with that mindset, you're not going to be an active listener, right? You're not going to be seeking first to understand the person you're calling. You're just going to be looking for that meeting. And what the downstream impact of that is, Michael, is you can book that meeting, right? You can say magical things on the phone to influence somebody into
Yeah.
giving you 30 minutes, but they show up to that meeting, right? There's no reason to meet, right? They may not be the
Mhm.
right person. The timing may be off. This could be, you know what I mean? Like, and then you've wasted the AE's time. You've wasted your time. You've booked a meeting. You've done all these things, but you got the meeting. So it feels good. You should go into a cold call with the mindset, I'm calling to learn something about the person or the account that they work at, right? The reason for that is not everyone you call is going to be a good fit, plain and
Mhm.
simple. So you need to learn and make sure, right? We have really good indicators that, hey, they have a big team that does this that's a perfect fit for us, or there's a software we can integrate with that they use that we could help, yada yada yada. But plain and simple, cold calling, you need to call with the purpose of learning something about the other person or their company, right? And when you do that, what happens now is this snowball effect of like what I call compounding interest. So that thing, whatever it is that you learned about that company, now it becomes compounding interest for the other 5 or 6 people at that company you could be calling, right? If it's an
Mhm.
enterprise company, there's 30, 40, 50 people at a company you could call and book a meeting with. What happens when you go in with the mindset of just booking a meeting, you're probably not asking, uncovering questions. You're not really trying to understand if there is a problem in the first place. When you do that, you miss out on really valuable information that you may not book a meeting with that first person you called, but now you know something, right, about them or their company that you can use with the 7 to 8 to 9 other people in their business. And your chances of converting that into a meeting become way higher. So the simple answer is change your mindset. When you make cold calls, it's not to book a meeting, it's to learn something about a person or an account. Then if it makes sense, we get the meeting. It's a simple shift, but um, it's amazing what your ears listen for when you change that mindset.
Yeah. I love this, and I agree with you completely. Many people disagree with this. I'm 100% sure. Like, no, the goal is go, book a meeting, you fluff it up. Sure, I think the end result will be the meeting, and if you have relevancy, people might ask even for that meeting themselves if there is a real business problem.
Without a doubt, man. Like, and the problem is a lot of companies look at sales development or top of funnel prospectors, whatever you call it, as an entry level role. And
Mhm.
if you hire for an entry level role, you get entry level results. That's cool. We don't do that over here at 8x8. This is not an entry level role, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're hiring talented people, right? Or people that have the ability to be really good, right, at their job. And when you devalue it in the first place and say, oh, these are just appointment setters or they're just booking meetings, you devalue the role. You're looking for the wrong people, right? There are so many talented salespeople in this world that aren't in tech, that don't even have a clue what SDR stands for, that if you find them and you say to them, hey, the average SDR makes like their OTE is double the median income of a US citizen. Double,
Mhm.
right? Double, right? Then literally half of the country, right? You tell a hungry salesperson that's slinging phones in a wireless store, in a call center, or selling insurance that, like, I get to call people and send emails, and I get 15 qualified meetings in a quarter. You're going to pay me $100,000? Yeah, man. Like,
Mhm.
again, it goes back to that. It's a root problem, right? So
Mhm.
that's why that happens. It's like, oh, they're just booking meetings and setting appointments. Like, yeah, if that's how you look at it, those are
Mhm.
the results you're going to get, right? When you look at it differently, you get better results.
I wanted to ask my last question and get your perspective. When you join in, I mean, based on my experience years back, like leaders, they just get hired, they ask about your motivation. I'm going to go back to what you said at the beginning. Some reps, they straight looking for more money. They want more commission. They want to earn more. Some others want internal promotions, want to get to AE position, the typical, again, growth path, if you will. Some others want to learn about other opportunities. So how do you navigate that? Like if some people like in your team, they're really hungry for this and they've been around, way longer than you joined in, and maybe they heard some promises in the past, they open up with about these things to you. Hey, new leader, this is what I want. How would you navigate that to understand, like, where they sit actually and help them actually grow?
The biggest issue is you have to set expectations. A lot of
Mhm.
leaders coming into a new company are scared to set expectations with people that have been there because they're not on step one of their journey, right? And it's an unfair reality, right? But you can't be that person that comes in and promises all these pie in the sky stuff, right? Because you don't know, right? You don't know, at the end of the day, right? Unless you're at a enormous company with, I'm talking, massive, like very predictable promotional paths. Like you don't know, right? Because the nature of business is changing. So the growth and development of our people should be the number one thing we care about, right? So you have to set expectations first, right? And that normally comes to cross-functional collaboration, like what exists today, right? 8x8 has a really cool Pathfinder program, and we do a really good job of elevating our SDRs, but not every company is like that, right? So, and we can do more, right? But like, what can you build out in order to make sure there's a pathway? Not a guarantee, but a pathway. I think it's really hard, no matter what company you work at, to guarantee, hey, Miss SDR, if you hit quota 6 months in a row or 4 quarters in a row, whatever it is, you will get promoted, right? A lot of businesses don't operate like that. Often there needs to be headcount growth or a seat open. So what can we do to prepare them for the next step? Develop them, right? So give them the skills for the next role, and then make sure that the doorway is open between sales, between ops, between marketing, between CSM. Right? A big miss is there's this old school way of like SDRs naturally go to AE. Like SDRs can be pretty freaking good at a lot of things with the skills they learn, right? Or hey, the next step at AE, right, is commercial and mid-market and enterprise, right? Like we need to make sure that these pathways are open. But to answer your question, when you're coming in, that's a really difficult thing to navigate. But you have to set the expectation very early on. If you can't guarantee them something, don't do it. Show them the vision, right? Ask them to work with you. Think about it. You could get some rep that's been here for 2 years and they were just about to get promoted, and then that manager that was promoting them is gone. It's like, oh my goodness, right? Like, but that previous leader was telling you something wrong, right? So it's tough. But the thing I found that works the best is honesty, being straightforward, setting expectations, and then going forward. Everyone knows, but it's our jobs to do as much as we possibly can to lift our people up. And as long as you have that mindset, it'll work out at the end of the day.
Love it. This could be another topic for another pod, I would say, but I think we got to wrap it up. Look, man, I appreciate you. Really enjoyed this conversation. If someone wants to reach out to get to know you or have a conversation, can they, and how?
100%. Yeah, add me on LinkedIn. Literally just search my name, send me a request, put "sell me this pen" in the request, and I'll add it. I love chatting with folks, fellow leaders. I think we need to do a better job of just like specifically sales leaders, right? Just talking, right? Just sharing what's working, what isn't, because the AI coming for our jobs thing is real. In a good way, though. In a good way, right? It's gonna. We want to share these ideas. I think we live in an age where a lot of people, even experienced people like you and I, are very uncertain with like the world is changing so fast. So best thing we can do is talk to each other. So yeah, I'm an open book. Add me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat.
Awesome, man. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And then until next time, bye for now.
Thanks, Michael.